Have you ever wondered why some people walk into a room and everyone turns to look while others seem invisible? Why certain souls radiate such magnetic presence that strangers feel drawn to help them, love them, trust them? My dear friend, this is not about physical beauty or worldly charm. This is about the divine light that shines from within. Today, I will teach you how to make your spiritual aura so luminous that others cannot help but be attracted to the God presence glowing through you. By the end of our sacred time together, you will possess the ancient knowledge that saints and sages have used for millennia to become magnetically attractive, not through manipulation or personality tricks, but by awakening the divine radiance that is your true nature. You suffer now because you have been taught to seek love, approval, and connection through your small ego self. You try to impress others with your accomplishments, your appearance, your clever words, but these external strategies leave you feeling exhausted and still fundamentally alone. You wonder why relationships feel shallow, why people seem drawn to others but not to you, why you feel invisible despite your best efforts. I have spent 70 years studying the science of divine magnetism, both in the caves of the Himalayas and among the people of the world. I have witnessed how the greatest saints naturally drew millions, not through charisma, but through their transparent love. I have seen ordinary souls transform into spiritual magnets once they learn to align with their divine nature rather than fight against it. You will discover that true attraction has nothing to do with being perfect and everything to do with being authentic. Where you now exhaust yourself trying to be impressive, you will learn to be genuinely attractive by letting your soul shine. Where you now fear rejection and judgment, you will become so centered in divine love that others' opinions cannot diminish your radiance. The loneliness and disconnection you feel will dissolve as you realize you were never meant to attract people to your personality. You were meant to attract them to the godlight within you. When you master this understanding, relationships become effortless, opportunities flow naturally, and you become a blessing wherever you go. This is not about gaining power over others, but about becoming so aligned with divine love that you naturally inspire others to remember their own divine nature. You will become irresistibly attractive because you radiate the very thing every soul secretly longs for: pure, unconditional love. Let me take you on a journey to understand how this divine magnetism first revealed itself to me and others who have mastered this sacred art. I want to tell you about a remarkable woman who came into my life many years ago, a soul who perfectly demonstrated the transformation I'm teaching you today. Her name was Sister Gyanamata, and when I first met her, she was already in her 70s, a widow who had lived a life of quiet service. By worldly standards, she was invisible, an elderly woman with no wealth, no fame, no extraordinary talents that people usually notice. But something extraordinary happened to her through the practice of divine love. As she deepened her meditation and learned to see God in everyone she met, her entire presence began to change. It was not that she became younger or more beautiful in the conventional sense. Rather, she became luminous. Her face began to glow with an inner light that drew people like moths to a flame. I watched in wonder as this transformation unfolded. Visitors to our ashram would seek her out specifically, often not even knowing why they felt so drawn to her. They would sit in her presence and feel waves of peace washing over them. Troubled souls would confess their deepest secrets to her, finding in her eyes the unconditional love they had searched for their entire lives. What was her secret? She had learned to completely dissolve the barriers between her small self and the divine self. When you looked into her eyes, you were not seeing Sister Gyanamata, you were seeing God looking back at you with infinite compassion. This is the true source of irresistible magnetism. When people are in the presence of someone who has become transparent to divine love, they cannot help but be attracted to that radiance. She would often say to me, "Master, I am nothing. I am simply a window that God uses to shine love into the world." And this is precisely why she became so magnetic. She had no ego agenda, no need to impress or control others. She was simply a pure channel for divine grace, and everyone who met her felt blessed by that encounter. This brings me to another profound lesson I learned during my travels in India. There was a man in the holy city of Benares who appeared to be nothing more than a beggar. He wore simple clothes, owned no possessions, and sat quietly by the river each day. Yet this man drew crowds of seekers who would travel hundreds of miles just to sit in his presence. I was curious about this phenomenon, so I went to observe him myself. What I discovered astonished me. This seemingly poor man radiated such wealth of spirit that everyone around him felt enriched just by being near him. He spoke very little, but when he did speak, his words carried the power to transform lives. People would bring him their problems, their sorrows, their deepest questions, and somehow, in his presence, they would find the answers they sought. The lesson was clear. True magnetic power has nothing to do with external circumstances and everything to do with the wealth of love that flows from within. This beggar was richer than any king because he had discovered the infinite treasure of divine love within his own heart. And because he freely shared this treasure with everyone he met, he became irresistibly attractive to all sincere souls. I learned that authentic spiritual magnetism operates on a completely different principle than worldly attraction. People are drawn to saints not because the saints need their admiration or approval, but because the saints offer something that every soul desperately craves: the experience of being truly seen, truly loved, truly accepted as they are. Now let me share with you something deeply personal about my own journey toward understanding this divine magnetism. As a young boy, I often felt different from others, misunderstood, as if I were speaking a language that few people could comprehend. I had profound spiritual experiences that I could not easily share, and this sometimes left me feeling isolated and lonely. When I became a monk and began teaching, I initially struggled with how to connect with people in a way that would truly serve their highest good. I wanted to help them, to inspire them, to awaken them to their divine nature, but sometimes my approach felt forced or artificial. I was trying to be magnetic through my words, my teachings, my spiritual accomplishments. Then came a pivotal moment with my beloved guru, Sri Yukteswar. He looked at me with those penetrating eyes that could see straight through to the soul and said, "Mukunda, you are trying too hard to be impressive when you should be learning to be transparent. People are not drawn to your personality, they are drawn to the divine presence that shines through you when you get your ego out of the way." This was a profound revelation for me. I realized that all my efforts to be a good teacher, a wise counselor, a magnetic speaker were actually creating barriers between myself and others. I was so focused on being someone special that I had forgotten how to simply be loving. From that moment, I changed my entire approach. Instead of trying to impress people with my spiritual knowledge, I focused on loving them unconditionally. Instead of presenting myself as someone who had all the answers, I allowed myself to be vulnerable and authentic about my own journey. Instead of trying to attract followers through charisma, I simply tried to be a clear channel for divine grace. The results were immediate and profound. People began responding to me in ways they never had before. They felt safe to open their hearts, to share their struggles, to receive the love that was always there, but had been hidden behind my attempts to be impressive. I discovered that the most magnetic thing about anyone is their capacity to love without condition, to see the divine nature in everyone they meet, and to make others feel truly valued and accepted. This understanding completely transformed not just my spiritual mission, but my entire human experience. Relationships became effortless when I stopped trying to get love and started focusing on giving love. Opportunities flowed naturally when I stopped seeking recognition and started looking for ways to serve. People were drawn to me not because I was perfect, but because I was authentic, willing to be real about my journey, while maintaining absolute faith in the divine potential within every soul. Let me share one more story that will illustrate the profound difference between ego magnetism and soul magnetism. Several years ago, a famous Hollywood actress came to see me. She was beautiful by every worldly standard, stunning appearance, successful career, admired by millions. Yet she sat in my office weeping like a lost child. "Master," she said, "I have everything that people say should make me happy, yet I feel empty inside. People are attracted to my image, but they don't really see me. I feel like I'm constantly performing, trying to maintain this perfect facade, but inside I'm dying of loneliness." I understood her pain deeply. She had become a master of ego magnetism, attracting others through her external appearance and achievements, but this kind of attraction is ultimately hollow because it's based on illusion rather than truth. People were drawn to her image, not to her authentic self. I began teaching her the principles I am sharing with you today. She learned to meditate, to connect with the divine love within her heart, to see herself and others as expressions of God's infinite creativity. Most importantly, she learned to be vulnerable and real rather than perfect and untouchable. The transformation was remarkable. As she stopped trying so hard to be impressive and started allowing her authentic self to shine through, her entire presence changed. She began attracting people who genuinely cared about her as a person, not just as a celebrity. Her relationships deepened. Her work became more meaningful. Most importantly, she found the peace and fulfillment that had eluded her despite all her worldly success. "Master," she told me months later, "I finally understand the difference between being admired and being loved. When I was focused on my image, people admired me but kept their distance. Now that I'm focused on loving others, they feel safe to come close and love me back." These stories reveal the profound truth that real magnetic power comes not from what you gain, but from what you surrender. When you surrender the need to be impressive, you become genuinely attractive. When you surrender the need to be perfect, you become beautifully authentic. When you surrender the need to control how others see you, you become irresistibly lovable. Now let me teach you the deeper principles behind this transformation, the science of spiritual magnetism that can revolutionize your entire approach to human relationships. The first principle you must understand is that thoughts and emotions create actual electromagnetic fields around your body. Modern science has proven what yogis have known for thousands of years, that human beings are not just physical bodies, but complex energy systems that extend far beyond the boundaries of skin and bone. Every thought you think, every emotion you feel, every intention you hold creates ripples in the energy field that surrounds you. When you think loving thoughts, your aura becomes bright and magnetic, naturally drawing others toward you. When you think fearful or angry thoughts, your aura becomes dark and repelling, pushing people away without them even knowing why. This is why some people make you feel wonderful just by being in their presence, while others drain your energy even when they haven't said a word. You are feeling the quality of their electromagnetic field, the energy they are broadcasting through their thoughts and emotions. Most people have never learned to consciously manage their energetic output. They broadcast whatever happens to be going through their minds: worry, frustration, judgment, fear, and then they wonder why others don't seem drawn to them. But when you understand this principle, you can learn to consciously radiate the kind of energy that naturally attracts what you want in life. The key insight is this: there are two completely different types of magnetism available to human beings. The first is ego magnetism, which attempts to attract others through impressive external qualities: beauty, wealth, talent, status, clever conversation. This kind of magnetism can work temporarily, but it's exhausting to maintain and ultimately unsatisfying because it's based on performance rather than authenticity. The second type is soul magnetism, which attracts others through the authentic expression of divine love. This magnetism is effortless because you're not performing, you're simply being your true self. It's sustainable because it doesn't depend on maintaining any kind of facade. And it's deeply satisfying because it creates genuine connections based on truth rather than illusion. Soul magnetism works because every human being, deep down, is hungry for authentic love. People are tired of superficial interactions, tired of feeling like they have to pretend to be someone they're not, tired of relationships based on mutual performance rather than mutual acceptance. When they encounter someone who radiates genuine love and acceptance, they feel like they can finally relax and be themselves. This brings me to the second crucial principle: the barriers that block this natural magnetism. Most people are not magnetically attractive not because they lack any innate quality, but because they have unconsciously erected barriers that prevent their natural radiance from shining through. The biggest barrier is fear. Fear of rejection, fear of judgment, fear of not being good enough. When you're afraid, you naturally contract your energy field, pull back from others, and project an aura of defensiveness that repels rather than attracts. Fear makes you focus on protecting yourself rather than loving others. And this self-protective stance is the opposite of magnetic presence. Pride is another major barrier. When you're trying to prove how special, smart, or successful you are, you create distance between yourself and others. People can feel when you're putting yourself above them, and this inequality prevents genuine connection. True magnetism comes from humility, from seeing yourself and others as equal expressions of the same divine love. Self-judgment is equally destructive to magnetic presence. When you're constantly criticizing yourself, rejecting parts of your personality, trying to be someone other than who you are, you fragment your energy and confuse your aura. People can sense this internal conflict, and it makes them uncomfortable. Magnetic people have learned to accept themselves completely, including their imperfections. And this self-acceptance gives others permission to relax and be authentic too. The antidote to all these barriers is the practice of unconditional love, starting with love for yourself. When you truly accept yourself as you are, when you stop trying to be perfect and start trying to be real, when you focus on loving others rather than getting them to love you, all the barriers dissolve naturally. This leads me to the third and most important principle: becoming transparent to divine love. This is the ultimate secret of spiritual magnetism, the practice that transforms ordinary human beings into irresistible sources of blessing and inspiration. Transparency means learning to get your ego self out of the way so that divine love can flow through you unobstructed. It doesn't mean becoming a doormat or losing your personality. Rather, it means using your unique personality as a clear window for divine love to express itself in the world. Think of yourself as a beautiful stained glass window. The glass has its own unique colors and patterns. This is your personality, your individual way of expressing life. But the purpose of the window is not to admire itself, it's to let the light shine through. When divine light pours through your personality window, it creates something beautiful and magnetic that draws people toward the source of that light. The practice of transparency requires daily connection with the divine source through meditation and prayer. You cannot give what you do not have, and you cannot radiate love that you are not regularly receiving from its infinite source. This is why all truly magnetic people, whether they call themselves spiritual or not, have some way of regularly connecting with something greater than their individual selves. In meditation, you learn to identify less with your passing thoughts and emotions, and more with the eternal love that is your true nature. You discover that beneath all the surface turbulence of daily life, there is a deep ocean of peace and love that never changes. The more you connect with this deeper reality, the more naturally you radiate it in your interactions with others. Prayer and blessing others is another essential practice for developing spiritual magnetism. When you silently bless everyone you meet, when you look for the divine spark in every person you encounter, when you send love to those who are difficult or unfriendly, you train yourself to be a constant source of positive energy. This practice not only transforms the quality of your own aura, but it actually helps heal and elevate the consciousness of everyone around you. The beautiful truth about spiritual magnetism is that it serves everyone. Unlike ego magnetism, which is often competitive and manipulative, soul magnetism creates win-win situations. When you become genuinely magnetic through divine love, you don't diminish others, you inspire them to remember their own divine nature. You don't create dependence, you empower others to find their own connection to source. You don't seek to control, you simply offer love and allow others the freedom to receive it or not. Understanding these truths intellectually is only the beginning. Now you must learn to embody them through dedicated spiritual practice. Let me teach you the specific techniques that will strengthen your spiritual magnetism and make your aura irresistibly attractive to others who are seeking authentic love and truth. The first practice is what I call the divine love meditation. This technique opens your heart center and allows you to feel and radiate the unconditional love that is your true nature. Find a quiet place where you will not be disturbed and sit comfortably with your spine straight and your hands resting on your heart. Begin by taking several deep breaths, allowing your body and mind to settle into stillness. Then bring to mind someone you love easily and naturally, perhaps a child, a beloved friend, or a spiritual teacher. Feel the warmth and affection you have for this person filling your heart center. Now gradually expand this feeling of love to include yourself. Many people find this challenging because they have been taught to be self-critical. But remember that you cannot truly love others if you do not love yourself. Place your hands on your heart and say silently, "I am a beloved child of God, worthy of infinite love and acceptance." Once you can feel genuine love for yourself, begin to expand this love to include everyone in your life, family members, friends, co-workers, even people who have hurt or disappointed you. See each person as a divine soul having a human experience, deserving of compassion and understanding regardless of their behavior. Finally, expand your love to include all beings everywhere, people you will never meet, animals, plants, the earth itself. Feel yourself connected to the web of divine love that underlies all existence. Rest in this feeling of universal love for at least 10 minutes, allowing it to permeate every cell of your being. As you practice this meditation regularly, you will notice that the feeling of love becomes easier to access throughout your day. You will find yourself naturally looking at others with more kindness and compassion. Most importantly, you will begin to radiate an energy that draws people toward you because they can feel the genuine love flowing from your heart. The second essential practice is what I call the blessing practice. This technique transforms every human interaction into an opportunity to strengthen your spiritual magnetism while serving others. Throughout your day, as you encounter different people, silently bless them instead of judging them. When you see someone who appears angry or unfriendly, instead of reacting with your own negativity, silently send them love and say, "May you find the peace you are seeking." When you meet someone who seems confident and successful, instead of feeling envious or inferior, bless them by thinking, "May your success be used to serve the highest good." This practice is particularly powerful when dealing with difficult people. Instead of matching their negative energy with your own, you consciously choose to respond with love. This not only protects your own aura from becoming contaminated with negative vibrations, but it often has a mysterious power to actually soften the other person's hostility. I have seen this principle work countless times. When you consistently respond to negativity with love, when you refuse to participate in the dramas and conflicts that others try to draw you into, when you maintain your center of peace and compassion regardless of external circumstances, you become someone that others naturally want to be around because your presence is healing and uplifting. The practice requires patience and dedication because it goes against our natural tendency to react defensively when others are unpleasant. But as you develop this skill, you will discover that you have tremendous power to influence the energy of any situation simply through your own conscious choice to radiate love instead of fear. The third practice involves specific techniques for strengthening and cleansing your aura, the electromagnetic field that surrounds your physical body. Just as you bathe your body regularly to keep it clean and healthy, you need to regularly cleanse your energetic body to maintain its magnetic power. Begin each day with a simple aura expansion exercise. Stand with your feet shoulder-width apart and your arms at your sides. Take a deep breath and imagine golden light filling your heart center. As you exhale, visualize this light expanding outward in all directions, creating a brilliant sphere of divine radiance around your entire body. With each breath, allow this sphere to grow larger and brighter until it extends several feet beyond your physical form. Feel yourself surrounded by protective, loving energy that repels negativity and attracts only that which serves your highest good. This practice not only strengthens your aura, but also sets a positive intention for how you want to show up in the world. Throughout the day, practice conscious breathing to maintain your connection to divine love. When you feel stressed, overwhelmed, or disconnected from others, return to deep, slow breathing while remembering that you are surrounded by infinite love and support. This simple practice can instantly shift your energy from contraction to expansion, from fear to love. At the end of each day, take time to cleanse your aura of any negative energy you may have absorbed from others or from challenging situations. Visualize yourself standing under a waterfall of pure white light that washes away any vibrations that do not belong to you. See all stress, worry, anger, or sadness being dissolved by this divine light, leaving you clean and renewed. As you develop these practices, you will notice remarkable changes not only in how others respond to you, but in how you feel about yourself and your life. You will find that you naturally attract more loving relationships, more meaningful opportunities, and more experiences that align with your highest values and aspirations. Remember that spiritual magnetism is not a technique to manipulate others, but a way of living that serves the highest good of all. When you become truly magnetic through divine love, you inspire others to remember their own divine nature. You become a blessing in their lives, and they become a blessing in yours. My beloved friend, you came here today believing that attraction was about changing yourself to please others. But now you understand the revolutionary truth. The most irresistible force in the universe is authentic divine love, and this love is your very essence. You do not need to become more beautiful, more successful, or more entertaining. You need only to remove the veils that hide your natural radiance. When you stop trying to impress others with your small self, and instead let them feel the infinite love that flows through you, you become magnetically attractive in the deepest, most satisfying way. Your aura, that divine light that surrounds your being, is not something you must create. It is something you must reveal. It has been shining within you since birth, waiting for you to recognize its power and let it illuminate the world around you. Remember this sacred truth. People are not drawn to perfection, they are drawn to authenticity. They are not attracted to those who have no problems. They are attracted to those who have transformed their problems into wisdom. They do not love you for hiding your humanity, they love you for expressing your divinity through your beautiful, imperfect, gloriously human experience. Go now and practice seeing every person you meet as a beloved child of God. Bless them silently. Send them love without expecting anything in return. Watch how your world transforms when you become a fountain of divine grace, rather than a seeker of human approval. Your magnetic presence is not a technique to master, but a truth to remember. You are divine love in human form. And when you live from this understanding, the whole world cannot help but be drawn to the light that shines through you. If these words have awakened the divine magnetism within you, please subscribe to continue our journey into the deeper mysteries of spiritual attraction. Like this video if it has touched your heart, and in the comments below, share your experiences as you begin to radiate the irresistible love that you truly are. Until we meet again in the eternal embrace of divine love, I am your devoted friend, Paramahansa Yogananda. My beloved, as the sun rises and the world stirs slowly into motion, there exists a moment fragile, golden, sacred, when the soul stands closest to the gates of heaven. Before the mind begins its habitual wanderings, before the senses rush outward toward their worldly duties, the early dawn stretches forth its invisible hand and whispers to the seeker, "Awaken not just from sleep, but from the long slumber of forgetfulness. Speak now to the infinite, for he is listening." This, dear soul, is the divine moment of morning prayer, not as ritual, not as recitation, but as a living communion between the soul and its creator. Too often, mankind stumbles through the hours of daylight without ever consulting the divine, allowing the tides of life to toss them in one direction and then another. But I say to you, no force, no day, no circumstance has more power over your destiny than the vibration with which you begin your morning. That is the seed from which the tree of your entire day will grow. If that seed is sown in hurry, worry, or forgetfulness, then the fruits you reap will be burdened with restlessness. But if that seed is planted in silence, in devotion, and in the clear light of a sacred prayer, then the blossoms of your day will carry the perfume of God's peace. What I offer you today is not just a prayer, but a practice, a key to divine guidance that must be spoken not once but 3 times each morning with reverent feeling. Why 3? Because in that sacred number lies a mystical power, once to awaken the body, once to lift the mind, and once to anchor the soul and spirit. This prayer is not my need is born from the eternal longing of the soul to return to its source. It is a vibration, a calling, a magnetic force that, when repeated with full awareness, draws the unseen guidance of God into your every step. So stay with me, beloved, for over the next hour, I will guide you through the sacred science of morning prayer as revealed to me through years of meditation and divine communion. You will learn not just what to say, but how to say it, how to breathe, how to feel, how to listen. You will discover how the act of prayer in the stillness of dawn opens a hidden door within you through which divine answers, protection, and clarity pour into your life like golden light spilling through a window at sunrise. Do not rush. Do not skim. This is not just information, it is initiation into a new way of being, a new way of beginning each sacred day. And if you stay with me until the end, if you open your heart and speak this prayer with full presence, I tell you with divine assurance, you will never again walk into a morning alone, for the light of the infinite will walk with you. Shall we begin? Beloved, before you can understand the depth of the prayer that I shall share with you, you must first understand the silent miracle that unfolds in the early hours of dawn. Morning is not merely the time when the sun appears in the sky, is the hour when the universe itself whispers gently to the soul, "Awaken to thy true nature." In those moments, when the world is still hushed and not yet weighed down by noise, your consciousness stands closer to spirit than at any other time of day. The yogis of ancient India called these hours Brahma Muhurtathe, sacred window before sunrise, when cosmic energy is at its highest vibration. During this time, the astral channels of your body, the subtle pathways through which divine energy flows, are more open than at any other hour. The spiritual eye glimmers more brightly, the heart feels more tender, and the mind more easily turns toward the eternal. Yogananda revealed that these moments are a golden opportunity for the soul to tune itself like a divine instrument, so that, throughout the day, it can sing in harmony with God's will. When you awaken during this holy hour and sit quietly, the veils of worldly delusion are thinner. The ego, which normally stands like a guard at the gates of your awareness, is still softened by sleep. The chatter of restless thoughts has not yet fully arisen, and the demands of daily life have not yet hardened your attention outward. In this pure silence, prayer spoken with devotion strikes like a bell in the halls of the infinite, reverberating through the unseen realms where divine guidance awaits. Imagine, beloved, a crystal-clear lake at dawn. The waters are still, unbroken by wind or movement, perfectly reflecting the rising sun. This is your consciousness in the early morning, a calm mirror, where God's light can be reflected without distortion. But when you awaken late, rush into duties, or let anxious thoughts cloud your mind, it is as if the surface of that lake is whipped into waves. The light of divine guidance is still shining, but its reflection cannot be clearly seen. This is why Yogananda emphasized morning prayer as a spiritual cornerstone. He knew that when you align with spirit at the start of your day, you are not just asking for blessings, you are tuning your whole being to the divine frequency. Like a ship aligning its compass before sailing out to sea, you align your inner compass to God's guidance, ensuring that each thought, word, and action flows from a higher wisdom. Beloved, this is not philosophy. It is a spiritual law as real as gravity. If you ignore it, you stumble through life half asleep, pulled here and there by circumstance. But if you embrace it, if you rise and pray when the world is still bathed in celestial silence, you awaken the dormant wisdom of the soul and feel a hand unseen yet unmistakably real, guiding you through every step of the day. Beloved soul, many imagine prayer to be merely words whispered into an empty sky, hopeful pleas cast into the unseen, waiting for a distant God to reply. But true prayer, as revealed by the Masters, is far more intimate, far more alive. Prayer is not a monologue but a dialogue of spirit with spirit, a sacred conversation where the human heart speaks and the divine answers not in booming thunder or flashes of light, but in the still, luminous silence of the soul itself. When you rise in the early morning and speak to God, you are not sending sound into space, you are vibrating the strings of your own consciousness, awakening the divine presence already residing within you. Yogananda often said, God is closer than the nearest breath, nearer than your very thoughts. This means that prayer is not a cry to reach something far away. It is a gentle turning inward, a soft knocking on the door of your own eternal being, where the divine has always been waiting. There are 3 sacred dimensions to prayer. First, the spoken word, where you engage the body and mind to declare your longing. Second, the inner feeling, where emotion deepens words into sincerity and faith. And finally, the silent communion, where the soul rests in God's response, a wordless assurance that you have been heard, understood, and embraced. To pray only with the lips is to skim the surface of an ocean, but to pray with feeling is to dive deeper, and to pray in silence is to merge entirely with those eternal waters. Morning is the most powerful time for this dialogue because the soul, freshly released from the dream state, still lingers near the astral realms where God's voice is easier to hear. The pull of worldly distractions has not yet hardened around you, and your intuition is more awake. If you begin the day speaking words of sacred devotion, feeling their truth resonate in your heart, and then sitting quietly in trust, you will soon notice that guidance begins to flow not always as audible speech or clear visions, but as gentle nudges, inner certainties, and radiant peace that accompanies your decisions throughout the day. Beloved, do not think that you must be a saint or a scholar to have this dialogue with God. Even a simple, childlike prayer uttered with sincerity can open channels to divine wisdom. The eternal friend does not measure the elegance of your words but the depth of your yearning. When you speak with reverence and love, when you truly want God's light to guide your steps, the divine responds unfailingly, often so subtly that only a heart stilled in faith can perceive it. Thus, morning prayer is not merely about asking, it is about awakening. It stirs the slumbering awareness of your divine nature and turns your whole being into a receptive temple, a living sanctuary where God can dwell and speak. If you learn to begin each day in this silent dialogue, every thought, every action that follows will be touched by invisible rays of guidance, for you have allowed Spirit to take the reins of your earthly journey. Beloved soul, even as your heart yearns for this divine dialogue each morning, you may have felt the weight of invisible obstacles that seem to pull you away from this sacred practice. Restlessness whispers that there is no time. Habit drags you straight into the noise of worldly duties. The mind says prayer is unnecessary because the day has already begun. Yet beneath these excuses lies a deeper truth. The ego, shaped by countless incarnations of outward living, resists anything that draws you inward toward God. To speak truly with Spirit in the early hours is to loosen ego's hold, and so it creates barriers to delay that reunion. One of the greatest obstacles is mechanical routine, the tendency to rush into prayer without feeling or presence, as if ticking a box to satisfy a duty. Such prayers may leave your lips, but they never reach the heart, and thus they do not magnetize divine guidance. Another obstacle is distraction, allowing the mind to wander toward tasks, worries, or desires while attempting to commune with the infinite. Prayer spoken from a divided mind is like a stream trickling over rocks it cannot yet carve a deep channel to the ocean of God's presence. Fatigue is another hindrance. If you wake late, burdened by the weight of restless sleep, the very energy needed for morning prayer feels weak. The yogic masters understood this and advised sleeping with spiritual awareness, whispering God's name as you drift into slumber, so that you may awaken refreshed and ready to greet the dawn with devotion. And lastly, there is doubt, the subtle thought that perhaps prayer changes nothing, that perhaps God is silent or distant. Such doubt blocks the flow of divine magnetism as surely as a stone dams a stream. But beloved, each of these obstacles can be dissolved with gentle, steady effort. Begin by sanctifying your mornings. Rise a little earlier, bathe your mind in gratitude before words are spoken, and breathe deeply to gather your scattered energy. As you prepare to pray, close your eyes and place your hand over your heart, silently affirming, I am here, fully present, ready to meet thee. With each breath, release thoughts of tasks and troubles, letting them drift away like leaves upon a current. When doubts whisper, remember Yogananda's words, God listens to every prayer. The sincere devotee's call cannot go unanswered. Trust this truth as you would trust the sun to rise. As you overcome these obstacles, prayer no longer feels like effort. It becomes natural, flowing, a joyful meeting with your eternal friend. Each morning will begin not with hurried footsteps in darkness, but with steady strides bathed in divine light, carrying you toward a day blessed by guidance from above. Beloved soul, as you prepare to learn the sacred prayer that will awaken divine guidance within you, understand first why the Masters taught that certain prayers must be spoken 3 times with full devotion. To the unknowing mind, this might seem like ritual or superstition, but in truth, repetition carries a profound spiritual science. It engraves vibration into consciousness, magnetizes the soul, and calls divine presence more powerfully than a single utterance could ever achieve. When you speak a prayer once, you awaken its meaning in the surface layers of the mind. It is like striking a bell, lightly its sound reaches only nearby. When you speak it twice, you deepen its resonance, allowing its vibration to sink beneath words into feeling, echoing in the chamber. My beloved, as the sun rises and the world stirs slowly into motion, there exists a moment fragile, golden, sacred, when the soul stands closest to the gates of heaven. Before the mind begins its habitual wanderings, before the senses rush outward toward their worldly duties, the early dawn stretches forth its invisible hand and whispers to the seeker, awaken not just from sleep, but from the long slumber of forgetfulness. Speak now to the infinite, for he is listening. This, dear soul, is the divine moment of morning prayer, not as ritual, not as recitation, but as a living communion between the soul and its creator. Too often, mankind stumbles through the hours of daylight without ever consulting the divine, allowing the tides of life to toss them in one direction and then another. But I say to you, no force, no day, no circumstance has more power over your destiny than the vibration with which you begin your morning. That is the seed from which the tree of your entire day will grow. If that seed is sown in hurry, worry, or forgetfulness, then the fruits you reap will be burdened with restlessness. But if that seed is planted in silence, in devotion, and in the clear light of a sacred prayer, then the blossoms of your day will carry the perfume of God's peace. What I offer you today is not just a prayer, but a practice, a key to divine guidance that must be spoken not once but 3 times each morning with reverent feeling. Why 3? Because in that sacred number lies a mystical power, once to awaken the body, once to lift the mind, and once to anchor the soul and spirit. This prayer is not my need is born from the eternal longing of the soul to return to its source. It is a vibration, a calling, a magnetic force that, when repeated with full awareness, draws the unseen guidance of God into your every step. So stay with me, beloved, for over the next hour, I will guide you through the sacred science of morning prayer as revealed to me through years of meditation and divine communion. You will learn not just what to say, but how to say it, how to breathe, how to feel, how to listen. You will discover how the act of prayer in the stillness of dawn opens a hidden door within you through which divine answers, protection, and clarity pour into your life like golden light spilling through a window at sunrise. Do not rush. Do not skim. This is not just information, it is initiation into a new way of being, a new way of beginning each sacred day. And if you stay with me until the end, if you open your heart and speak this prayer with full presence, I tell you with divine assurance, you will never again walk into a morning alone, for the light of the infinite will walk with you. Shall we begin? Beloved, before you can understand the depth of the prayer that I shall share with you, you must first understand the silent miracle that unfolds in the early hours of dawn. Morning is not merely the time when the sun appears in the sky, it is the hour when the universe itself whispers gently to the soul, "Awaken to thy true nature." In those moments, when the world is still hushed and not yet weighed down by noise, your consciousness stands closer to spirit than at any other time of day. The yogis of ancient India called these hours Brahma Muhurtathe, sacred window before sunrise, when cosmic energy is at its highest vibration. During this time, the astral channels of your body, the subtle pathways through which divine energy flows, are more open than at any other hour. The spiritual eye glimmers more brightly, the heart feels more tender, and the mind more easily turns toward the eternal. Yogananda revealed that these moments are a golden opportunity for the soul to tune itself like a divine instrument, so that, throughout the day, it can sing in harmony with God's will. When you awaken during this holy hour and sit quietly, the veils of worldly delusion are thinner. The ego, which normally stands like a guard at the gates of your awareness, is still softened by sleep. The chatter of restless thoughts has not yet fully arisen, and the demands of daily life have not yet hardened your attention outward. In this pure silence, prayer spoken with devotion strikes like a bell in the halls of the infinite, reverberating through the unseen realms where divine guidance awaits. Imagine, beloved, a crystal clear lake at dawn. The waters are still, unbroken by wind or movement, perfectly reflecting the rising sun. This is your consciousness in the early morning, a calm mirror, where God's light can be reflected without distortion. But when you awaken late, rush into duties, or let anxious thoughts cloud your mind, it is as if the surface of that lake is whipped into waves. The light of divine guidance is still shining, but its reflection cannot be clearly seen. This is why Yogananda emphasized morning prayer as a spiritual cornerstone. He knew that when you align with spirit at the start of your day, you are not just asking for blessings, you are tuning your whole being to the divine frequency. Like a ship aligning its compass before sailing out to sea, you align your inner compass to God's guidance, ensuring that each thought, word, and action flows from a higher wisdom. Beloved, this is not philosophy. It is a spiritual law as real as gravity. If you ignore it, you stumble through life half asleep, pulled here and there by circumstance. But if you embrace it, if you rise and pray when the world is still bathed in celestial silence, you awaken the dormant wisdom of the soul and feel a hand unseen yet unmistakably real, guiding you through every step of the day. Beloved soul, many imagine prayer to be merely words whispered into an empty sky, hopeful pleas cast into the unseen, waiting for a distant God to reply. But true prayer, as revealed by the Masters, is far more intimate, far more alive. Prayer is not a monologue but a dialogue of spirit with spirit, a sacred conversation where the human heart speaks and the divine answers not in booming thunder or flashes of light, but in the still, luminous silence of the soul itself. When you rise in the early morning and speak to God, You are not sending sound into space, you are vibrating the strings of your own consciousness, awakening the divine presence already residing within you. Yogananda often said, God is closer than the nearest breath, nearer than your very thoughts. This means that prayer is not a cry to reach something far away. It is a gentle turning inward, a soft knocking on the door of your own eternal being, where the divine has always been waiting. There are 3 sacred dimensions to prayer. First, the spoken word, where you engage the body and mind to declare your longing. Second, the inner feeling, where emotion deepens words into sincerity and faith. And finally, the silent communion, where the soul rests in God's response, a wordless assurance that you have been heard, understood, and embraced. To pray only with the lips is to skim the surface of an ocean, but to pray with feeling is to dive deeper, and to pray in silence is to merge entirely with those eternal waters. Morning is the most powerful time for this dialogue because the soul, freshly released from the dream state, still lingers near the astral realms where God's voice is easier to hear. The pull of worldly distractions has not yet hardened around you, and your intuition is more awake. If you begin the day speaking words of sacred devotion, feeling their truth resonate in your heart, and then sitting quietly in trust, you will soon notice that guidance begins to flow not always as audible speech or clear visions, but as gentle nudges, inner certainties, and radiant peace that accompanies your decisions throughout the day. Beloved, do not think that you must be a saint or a scholar to have this dialogue with God. Even a simple, childlike prayer uttered with sincerity can open channels to divine wisdom. The eternal friend does not measure the elegance of your words but the depth of your yearning. When you speak with reverence and love, when you truly want God's light to guide your steps, the divine responds unfailingly, often so subtly that only a heart stilled in faith can perceive it. Thus, morning prayer is not merely about asking, it is about awakening. It stirs the slumbering awareness of your divine nature and turns your whole being into a receptive temple, a living sanctuary where God can dwell and speak. If you learn to begin each day in this silent dialogue, every thought, every action that follows will be touched by invisible rays of guidance, for you have allowed Spirit to take the reins of your earthly journey. Beloved soul, even as your heart yearns for this divine dialogue each morning, you may have felt the weight of invisible obstacles that seem to pull you away from this sacred practice. Restlessness whispers that there is no time. Habit drags you straight into the noise of worldly duties. The mind says prayer is unnecessary because the day has already begun. Yet beneath these excuses lies a deeper truth. The ego, shaped by countless incarnations of outward living, resists anything that draws you inward toward God. To speak truly with Spirit in the early hours is to loosen ego's hold, and so it creates barriers to delay that reunion. One of the greatest obstacles is mechanical routine, the tendency to rush into prayer without feeling or presence, as if ticking a box to satisfy a duty. Such prayers may leave your lips, but they never reach the heart, and thus they do not magnetize divine guidance. Another obstacle is distraction, allowing the mind to wander toward tasks, worries, or desires while attempting to commune with the infinite. Prayer spoken from a divided mind is like a stream trickling over rocks it cannot yet carve a deep channel to the ocean of God's presence. Fatigue is another hindrance. If you wake late, burdened by the weight of restless sleep, the very energy needed for morning prayer feels weak. The yogic masters understood this and advised sleeping with spiritual awareness, whispering God's name as you drift into slumber, so that you may awaken refreshed and ready to greet the dawn with devotion. And lastly, there is doubt, the subtle thought that perhaps prayer changes nothing, that perhaps God is silent or distant. Such doubt blocks the flow of divine magnetism as surely as a stone dams a stream. But beloved, each of these obstacles can be dissolved with gentle, steady effort. Begin by sanctifying your mornings. Rise a little earlier, bathe your mind in gratitude before words are spoken, and breathe deeply to gather your scattered energy. As you prepare to pray, close your eyes and place your hand over your heart, silently affirming, I am here, fully present, ready to meet thee. With each breath, release thoughts of tasks and troubles, letting them drift away like leaves upon a current. When doubts whisper, remember Yogananda's words, God listens to every prayer. The sincere devotee's call cannot go unanswered. Trust this truth as you would trust the sun to rise. As you overcome these obstacles, Prayer no longer feels like effort. It becomes natural, flowing, a joyful meeting with your eternal friend. Each morning will begin not with hurried footsteps in darkness, but with steady strides bathed in divine light, carrying you toward a day blessed by guidance from above. Beloved soul, as you prepare to learn the sacred prayer that will awaken divine guidance within you, understand first why the Masters taught that certain prayers must be spoken 3 times with full devotion. To the unknowing mind, this might seem like ritual or superstition, but in truth, repetition carries a profound spiritual science. It engraves vibration into consciousness, magnetizes the soul, and calls divine presence more powerfully than a single utterance could ever achieve. When you speak a prayer once, you awaken its meaning in the surface layers of the mind. It is like striking a bell lightly. Its sound reaches only nearby. When you speak it twice, you deepen its resonance, allowing its vibration to sink beneath words into feeling, echoing in the chambers of the heart. And when you speak it a 3rd time, slowly, reverently, fully surrendered, it penetrates the subconscious and rises into superconscious awareness, where spirit dwells. This threefold utterance transforms a prayer from spoken thought into living power, infusing every cell of your being with divine magnetism. Yogananda often reminded his disciples that spiritual repetition builds energy the way drawing a bowstring builds tension before releasing an arrow. Each repetition aligns thought, feeling, and soul force more completely, aiming your devotion straight toward the heart of God. In this way, your words become not mere sound but a current of spiritual electricity. Just as a magnet grows stronger when rubbed repeatedly in one direction, your prayer spoken 3 times draws divine grace more irresistibly with each utterance. This pattern of sacred repetition is seen throughout the spiritual traditions of the world. Christ often said, "Verily, verily," when declaring truths of eternal weight. Ancient mantras in India are repeated thrice to seal their vibration. Even nature reflects this law. The threefold rhythm of dawn, noon, and dusk, the triune aspects of creation as Father, Son, Holy Spirit, or Sat, Tat, Om. When you repeat a holy prayer 3 times at dawn, you are not performing a ritual. You are attuning your own triune nature of body, mind, and soul to God's infinite presence. Beloved, when you learn this prayer, do not rush it. Let the first recitation awaken intention, the second stir deep devotion, and the third lift you into silent communion. Speak it as if knocking 3 times on the golden gates of heaven, knowing with absolute faith that each knock is heard, that each vibration calls forth the answering presence of the eternal. This is the law of divine magnetism. Speak once, and God listens. Speak thrice with all your heart, and God answers. Beloved soul, having journeyed through the understanding of why mornings are sacred, why prayer is divine dialogue, and why repetition seals the soul's magnetism, it is now time to unveil the prayer that, when spoken 3 times with reverent devotion, opens the channels of divine guidance in your life. This prayer is not complex. It is not adorned with lofty phrases meant to impress the intellect. It is simple, for the eternal friend does not measure eloquence but sincerity. Sit now as you would at dawn, the world still hushed, your breath calm and steady. Imagine the first rays of sunlight touching your face as you lift your heart to the infinite and softly whisper, "Beloved Spirit, guide my thoughts, my steps, my words. Awaken thy wisdom within me. Let me walk this day as thy instrument of light." Speak these words once, feeling each syllable as a thread-weaving connection between your soul and God. Speak them again, slower, deeper, as though your whole being is bending in reverence before the inner altar of spirit. And speak them a 3rd time, not only with your lips, but with every cell of your body, every beat of your heart, until you feel a quiet radiance filling you, a warmth that is not of this earth but from the divine itself. This is not imagination. Each line of this prayer holds a key to divine guidance. When you say, "Guide my thoughts, my steps, my words," you surrender the small, restless will of the ego into the higher wisdom of God. When you whisper, "Awaken thy wisdom within me," you invite the sleeping intuition of the soul to stir and shine, ready to recognize divine signals throughout the day. And when you affirm, "Let me walk this day as thy instrument of light," you declare your highest purpose and oath to move through life blindly, but to let spirit flow through you. turning even mundane acts into channels of grace. Spoken 3 times at dawn, this prayer is like a sacred bell ringing within your consciousness, calling your soul back from the dream of separation into the living reality of divine companionship. As the day unfolds, you will find that your thoughts are calmer, your steps more certain, your words more kind and inspired. This is not luck or chance. It is the direct response of spirit to the invitation you offered with devotion in the stillness of morning. Beloved, do not merely read this prayer, live it. Tomorrow morning, as the first light brushes the sky, rise quietly and speak it aloud 3 times. Do it again the next day, and the day after, until the practice becomes as natural as breathing. You will soon see that divine guidance, once hidden, begins to reveal itself in every moment, leading you with an invisible yet unmistakable hand toward peace, wisdom, and joy. Beloved soul, now that you have received this sacred prayer, let us dive deeper into its divine mechanics, for every word is more than sound, it is a vibration infused with spiritual law. When you speak this prayer, you are not merely forming sentences, you are awakening cosmic forces within you and aligning your being with the guiding intelligence of spirit that orchestrates every particle of creation. The first line, "Beloved Spirit, guide my thoughts, my steps, my words," is an act of surrender. Each time you say these words, you are offering the reins of your life into God's hands. The mind, usually restless and self-directed, bows to the higher wisdom of the soul. In yoga, this surrender is known as Ishwar Pranidhanatha, sacred yielding to the divine, which paradoxically does not weaken you but fills you with strength not your own. Through this line, you attune your mental currents to divine frequency, allowing inspiration to flow unimpeded. The second line, "Awaken thy wisdom within me," stirs the intuitive faculty of the soul. Yogananda taught that intuition is the direct perception of truth without reasoning, the whisper of God through the calm heart and still mind. By repeating this line, you activate dormant channels of superconscious awareness, where guidance is not heard as words but felt as certainty, as radiant knowing that shines light on every choice you must make. This wisdom is already present within you. The prayer simply removes the veils that have kept it obscured. The third line, "Let me walk this day as thy instrument of light," transforms your intention for the day. No longer do you walk as a small, isolated self reacting blindly to circumstances. Instead, you walk as an instrument of spirit, letting divine power flow through you like sunlight through a crystal, touching every life you encounter with healing, clarity, and peace. Yogananda called this the highest purpose of human life, to become transparent to God's light, so that every thought, action, and word reflects the radiance of the divine. Spoken 3 times, these lines create a powerful spiritual circuit: surrender to guidance, awakening of wisdom, and commitment to serve as a channel of light. The repetition strengthens this circuit like an electric current flowing through your consciousness, charging you with divine magnetism that not only guides your day but subtly transforms your destiny. Over time, this prayer reprograms your subconscious mind, washing away fear, confusion, and old karmic patterns, replacing them with serenity and clarity born of direct attunement with spirit. Beloved, know this: when you speak these words in the quiet of dawn, unseen forces move in harmony with your intent. The angels of intuition draw closer, the currents of divine protection surround you, and the silent wisdom of God begins to orchestrate your day with a perfection the human mind could never achieve. Each repetition is a seed sown in the garden of your soul, and as you continue this practice, it will blossom into a life where every step is guided, every thought illumined, and every moment filled with divine purpose. Beloved soul, before you utter this sacred morning prayer, it is essential to prepare the vessel of your body and mind to receive the light of spirit fully. Prayer is not merely a matter of words, it is an energetic offering of your whole being to the divine. Just as a musician tunes their instrument before playing a symphony, you must gently tune your consciousness before speaking this prayer, ensuring that every word vibrates in harmony with God's presence. Begin the moment you awaken. As your eyes open to the first light of dawn, do not rush immediately into movement or thought. Instead, lie still for a few breaths, placing your hand over your heart, and silently whisper within, "Thank you, beloved Spirit, for another day to know thee." This first moment sets the tone for the entire morning, shifting your awareness from worldly duties to divine remembrance. Rise slowly and find a quiet, clean space in your home where you can sit undisturbed. If possible, create a small altar or sacred corner where you place a candle, a flower, or an image of the divine or your guru. These are not objects of worship, but symbols that gently remind the restless mind of the higher purpose for which you live. Sit with your spine straight, shoulders relaxed, and eyes gently closed. Begin with deep measured breathing, inhaling to a count of 6, holding for a count of 6, exhaling for 6, and pausing for another 6. Repeat this cycle 3 times. As you do, imagine drawing in divine energy with each breath and releasing every trace of tension, anxiety, or distraction with each exhalation. Now, lift your gaze slightly toward the point between the eyebrows, the spiritual eye, without straining. This is the doorway to superconsciousness, where intuition awakens and divine guidance enters your being. Even if you see nothing, simply holding your attention there creates a magnetic pull that elevates your awareness toward higher states of receptivity. If you feel comfortable, silently chant a simple mantra or the holy sound Om 3 times, letting the vibration resonate gently through your body. This clears the subtle channels of energy, aligning your consciousness with the universal vibration of spirit. Only after this brief ritual grounded, purified, and uplifted should you speak the morning prayer. This preparation is not meant to be long or complicated. In just a few minutes, you can transform your. There is a quiet ache within you, one that returns again and again, not as pain but as presence. It rises in still moments, in early morning hours, or just before sleep. It emerges when you see something beautiful and your breath catches for no reason, or when you are surrounded by people and yet feel the strange warmth of something else drawing near. This feeling does not speak in sentences. It does not argue or insist. It arrives softly, like a child standing at your door with a message you're afraid to open. And yet, this feeling is not weakness. It is not confusion. It is not some fleeting mood. It is the voice of your soul, and in that voice, God is speaking. You may have ignored it. You may have dismissed it. You may have tried to silence it beneath busyness or logic, but still it remains, because it is not a passing emotion. It is a divine message sealed in your heart, waiting for you to finally listen. Many of you have felt this for years, a quiet longing, a gentle knowing, an invisible nudge when you're about to say yes to something that feels wrong, or no to something your soul has waited lifetimes to receive. You have felt it in relationships, in decisions, in moments of deep stillness where tears arose not from sorrow, but from a truth that had no words. And yet, because it wasn't logical, because it didn't fit the plans of the mind, you brushed it aside. You told yourself, it's just emotion. But that was a mistake. Because this feeling was never meant to be interpreted by the mind. It was meant to be honored by the heart. What if I told you that this feeling is not yours alone? That it is not some private ache, but part of a sacred thread woven through all awakening souls? What if I told you that the great saints, the mystics, the avatars who walked with radiant serenity and unshakable peace, what if I told you that they too began with this same whisper in their heart? Before their realization, before their surrender, there was always this feeling, persistent, pure, and quiet, pulling them toward remembrance. I too knew that feeling. As a young boy in India, I would feel a pull in the chest as I gazed at the stars, or when I heard the distant song of a temple bell. I didn't know what it meant, but I knew it was holy. I knew it was not to be ignored. And every time I listened, the path before me grew clearer, not through maps, but through divine magnetism. That is what this feeling is. It is magnetism, a silent pull from the divine center of your being, drawing you back into alignment with your true path, not the path the world applauds, not the path your fears chose, but the path your soul selected before you ever came into this body. And when you ignore it, when you dismiss it as random, inconvenient, or embarrassing, you are not just avoiding discomfort. You are postponing your divine appointment. You are stepping away from the very guidance that could have made your life simpler, more luminous, more free. So let me say this to you now, not as a suggestion, but as a soul command. Never again ignore that feeling. Never again mistake sacred intuition for emotional noise. If the feeling won't leave, if it comes back even after your reasoning has dismissed it, if it glows with quiet peace even when the mind calls it irrational, is not emotion. It is God. And God is not loud. He will not argue. He will not beg. But he will wait. He will remain in that holy corner of your heart until the day you stop, breathe, listen, and open the letter he left inside you. Let us begin this journey not by demanding answers, but by honoring that sacred discomfort. Place your hand over your heart now and breathe with me. Slowly, reverently. Let the inhale carry in the light. Let the exhale release resistance. Say inwardly, I remember this feeling. I will not ignore it again. And let that be your first step, not toward understanding, but toward listening. The feeling in your heart is not a question. It is a message. And from this moment forward, we will read it together. The modern world trains you to look for truth in words and explanations, in logic, in well-organized thoughts that can be justified or debated. But the divine, ever subtle and timeless, does not thunder into your life through arguments. God does not broadcast his presence through intellectual persuasion or the shouting of certainty. He whispers. He hums. He moves beneath the language, just beyond thought, in a place no book can reach. He speaks, not with human speech, but through the vibration of feeling deep, sacred, intuitive, and unmistakable to the still soul. You have been conditioned to think that knowledge must come from the head, but the sages knew that true knowing comes from the heart. Not the heart of emotion, swayed by moods and impulses, but the spiritual heart, the Anahata chakra, the lotus of divine reception, seated in the center of your being. When God wishes to guide you, he often bypasses the noisy corridors of your mind and plants his message directly in the silence of your feeling. And that feeling, though it may have no words, carries an entire symphony of divine instruction. Yogananda said it simply, intuition is the soul's power to know God, not to believe in God, not to study God, but to know him directly, unmistakably, through vibration. And how does intuition arrive? As feeling, a sacred recognition, a gentle pull, a still awareness that glows quietly in the chest and says, this is the way. You have felt it before. You have stood before a decision or a person or a path, and something deep within you said, yes, not because of evidence, not because of logic, but because your soul recognized something the mind could not yet explain. That was God speaking to you, not from above, but from within. Think of your heart not as an emotional center, but as a divine antenna, always vibrating, always tuned, but most of the time surrounded by static. Static from the world's noise, static from your own overthinking, static from fear and distraction, and the endless commentary of the ego. But when you become still, truly still, the antenna clears, the signal sharpens, and the message begins to flow, not in sentences, but in certainty, not in concepts, but in clarity. You don't know why you know, you just know. This is how God leads his children, not like a teacher writing formulas on a blackboard, but like a divine presence walking beside you silently, sending pulses of love into your chest every time you are about to make a choice that either honors or obscures your true path. And the tragedy is not that God is silent, it is that we have forgotten how to listen. We ask for signs, we beg for answers, but all along, the answer is glowing inside us as a sacred feeling. Patient, persistent, loving, waiting. Imagine a mother placing her hand on the shoulder of a child who is lost in worry. She doesn't say much. She simply presses her palm there, steady, warm, quiet. And somehow the child knows, I'm safe. That is how God speaks to you. That is the vibration of feeling. Not a speech, not an idea, but a presence so undeniable, so comforting, so clear, that you finally let go of the noise and allow yourself to be led. So now I say to you, stop expecting thunder. Stop waiting for fireworks. Stop demanding clarity in the language of the intellect when God is already speaking in the language of vibration. That inner feeling you have, the one that doesn't go away, the one that returns in prayer, in silence, in solitude, that is not random. That is not your imagination. That is God's message clothed in silence, wrapped in peace, carried not through sound but through knowing. Breathe now. Lift your gaze softly. Place your hand upon the chest and whisper, speak, Lord, I will feel. I will listen. Let this become your new posture, not straining to hear words, but softening to feel God's presence vibrating as peace in your heart. For when you begin to feel, you begin to hear. And when you truly hear, you will never walk in confusion again. If you have ever asked, "Why do I feel so conflicted inside?" or "Why can't I trust what I feel?" know this: the confusion you experience is not because the message is unclear, but because you are trying to translate heaven with the vocabulary of earth. You are trying to interpret divine guidance through the language of the analytical mind. But the mind, however intelligent, however refined, was never meant to be the interpreter of God. The mind is brilliant at navigating the outer world, at solving, planning, building, but when it comes to the soul's language, it is deaf, not by punishment, but by design. For the soul does not speak in syllogisms or sequences. It speaks in vibration. It speaks in stillness. It speaks in love. And the mind, with all its machinery, cannot grasp the simplicity of love without turning it into a formula. This is why so many people struggle when the inner guidance comes. They feel a clear, persistent stirring in the heart, a quiet knowing, a sacred pull, but the mind immediately intervenes. "This doesn't make sense," it says. "Where is the evidence? What if you're wrong? What if you're just being emotional?" And so the war begins. The feeling, radiant and true, standing silently in the heart, and the mind, loud and restless, circling around it with doubt. The tragedy is not that the feeling disappears. It remains. It always remains. But we learn to ignore it. We label it irrational. We suppress it. We trade the certainty of the soul for the arguments of the intellect. And in doing so, we lose the clarity that was trying to save us. Think of a violin playing a single, pure note in the middle of a roaring train station. That's what it's like when God speaks through the heart. The tone is beautiful, but it is delicate. The ego, the world, the noise of thought, they are the train, thundering past in constant motion. If you want to hear that note, you must become still. You must be willing to leave the noise behind. You must move away from the crowd of conflicting thoughts and into the sanctuary of sacred silence. For the mind cannot bring you to the gate of the soul, it can only distract you from it. Even the most logical minds, those trained in reason, analysis, argument, they've, at some point, been stopped by a feeling they could not explain, a moment of awe before the stars, a tear they could not justify, a sudden sense of, "This is right," even when everything on paper said it wasn't. That was the soul trying to speak, trying to cut through the scaffolding of thought and say, "There is a truth deeper than logic." But if you don't know how to honor it, if you don't know that this whisper is the divine itself, you'll dismiss it as emotion or fantasy, and the voice will not fight you. It will simply wait. This is why you must not ask the mind to confirm the guidance of the heart. You must not wait until the path feels safe to the ego before you walk it. The path of the soul is not built for comfort. It is built for freedom. And freedom is always confusing to the mind, because the mind is built for control. The soul, however, trusts. The soul knows that truth comes not through the mind's calculations, but through the heart's resonance. Let me offer you this reframe, a sacred key that will end much of your inner conflict. You are not confused. You are just ignoring the voice that whispers beneath thought. You are not lost. You are simply too high in the head and too distant from the chest. Your clarity is not missing, it is muted by the mind's insistence on understanding what was meant only to be felt. So, sit quietly now. Breathe gently. Bring your attention from the brow to the heart. Place your hand there. Say inwardly, "I don't need to understand. I need to feel. I don't need proof. I need presence. I don't need control. I need to listen." And in that listening, you will hear what the mind has never been able to grasp, that God has already spoken, that the message has already arrived, that your soul already knows. And all that remains is to stop thinking long enough, to feel it. To begin discerning the language of the soul, you must learn to recognize the anatomy of divine feeling, to distinguish it from passing emotion, to understand its structure not with the mind, but with reverent awareness. A divine feeling is not like other feelings. It is not born from restlessness or reaction. It does not swell from the ego's desire to have or to escape. It is not excitement dressed in spirituality. It does not shout. It does not push. It does not promise you a quick victory or warn you of punishment. A divine feeling is something entirely other. It is soft, luminous, persistent, and peaceful in its weight. It arises not from thought but from being, not from imagination but from intuition. When it comes, it is often without warning. It may rise while you are walking under trees, or sitting in quiet, or staring out the window on an ordinary day. And yet, though the setting is mundane, the moment is charged not with emotion, but with stillness. You feel the difference. The air becomes thicker with presence. The breath deepens. The chest expands. A knowing appears not loud, not urgent, but absolute. You may not understand why you feel what you feel. There may be no logic to it. But something within you recognizes it, like an ancient memory stirred from sleep. It carries no fear. It does not compel, it invites. And that is how you know it is not the mind's panacea, it is the soul's voice. Let me describe it another way. Imagine walking into a room where someone has burned sandalwood incense. You didn't see it lit. You weren't told it was there. But as soon as you step inside, you know. The fragrance is subtle. It doesn't leap out. It doesn't wave its arms. But it pervades everything. You breathe it in. It awakens something within you. And even if you cannot name what has changed, you know something holy has entered the space. A divine feeling is just like this. It pervades your field. It arrives as a sacred atmosphere, not a command. You don't need to analyze it. You simply need to inhale it. The divine feeling is also persistent, but not aggressive. It will not yell over your ego, but it will remain. It will return. If you ignore it, it won't punish you. It will wait. Days may pass, and then again, at a quiet moment it will rise. Perhaps when you are brushing your teeth, or just before falling asleep. And again it will say, with perfect peace, this is the way. You may try to forget, you may drown it in noise, but it will come again. Because this feeling is not created by you, is sent to you. It is God's message delivered not by angels in the sky, but by vibration within your chest. And always, always, the divine feeling carries peace. This is its defining mark. Not excitement, not urgency, not tension, but peace. Even if it asks you to do something difficult, even if it guides you to release something or walk through the unknown, there will be an unmistakable peace in the center of it. That peace is your confirmation. It is the signature of the infinite. The ego screams, the soul whispers. The ego pressures, the soul invites. The ego grasps, the soul expands. If what you are feeling comes with pressure, fear, or the sense of racing time, it is not divine. But if it comes with stillness, with space, with the inner yes that needs no explanation, it is. I say to you now, begin to notice the fragrance of these moments. Do not rush to name them. Do not demand to understand. Simply become still enough to feel. And when the feeling comes, place your hand on your heart and say, I welcome this vibration. I will not explain it away. I will not doubt the whisper. I will not dismiss the fragrance of the divine. For the feeling in your heart is not a signal to think more. It is a signal to stop thinking, to feel, to listen, and to bow. There is a sacred sadness that comes not from loss, but from disconnection, silent sorrow that emerges when you ignore the call of your own soul. And though the world may not see it, though no one may speak of it, it becomes a dull ache beneath all your successes, a fatigue that no amount of sleep can touch. This is what happens when you dismiss the divine feeling in your heart. When you say no to that quiet whisper, when you let the mind override the knowing, when you postpone, deny, or downplay what God has planted within, the light does not punish you, but it does withdraw. Not out of judgment, but out of reverence for your free will. And in that withdrawal, you begin to drift not in location, but in vibration. You begin to forget what clarity felt like. You begin to question your ability to feel truth at all. You live, but not quite. You smile, but not deeply. You move through the world like a bird whose wings have been remembered but not used. When you ignore the voice of the soul, something inside you goes numb. At first, it's barely noticeable. You make the logical choice, and everything seems fine. You explain it to yourself. You say it wasn't the right time. You convince yourself it was a passing emotion. But the feeling doesn't go away. It just goes deeper. moving from the surface of awareness into the background hum of your being. And then one day you wake up and something feels off. You are restless. You are unmotivated. You don't know why. You look for external causes, but the truth is this: you are not lacking clarity. You are living against it. Let me offer you a parable. Imagine you are driving toward a destination. You have the GPS on. Halfway through, the voice says, "Turn right." But your mind says, "This way looks easier," and so you go left. For a while, the road is smooth. Everything seems fine. But slowly, things begin to shift. The path grows rough. The signs no longer make sense. You begin to feel unsure. And then the voice returns, not with anger, not with condemnation, but with calm, recalculating. The soul does not scold you. It does not abandon you. But it will always bring you back to the point where you chose logic over guidance, where you chose safety over truth. And you will have to decide again: will you listen? I have met many who say, "I feel lost. I don't know my purpose. I don't feel God anymore." And often the reason is not that God has withdrawn, but that they stopped responding. They felt the pull. They heard the whisper. They knew the path, but they delayed. And each time you delay the soul's guidance, you layer another veil over your intuition, not as punishment, but as consequence. The voice becomes quieter, not because it is gone, but because you have stopped valuing it. And soon, the static of the world becomes louder than the signal of heaven. But do not be discouraged, because even now, the voice remains. Even now, beneath your confusion, beneath your fatigue, beneath all the wrong turns and spiritual forgetfulness, the soul is whispering still. It is patient. It is luminous. It has not changed. And the moment you turn your attention back inward, not with guilt, but with longing, it returns, fully, instantly, like sunlight breaking through a forgotten window. Take a moment to reflect. Can you remember a time when you knew something in your heart, but didn't act on it? Can you recall how it lingered, how it dimmed when ignored, but never fully disappeared? That was not a missed opportunity. That was a divine instruction deferred. And now, even now, the opportunity may still be alive. The path may still be available. The miracle may still be waiting, not outside, but within, where you left it. So, let us breathe now. Close your eyes. Inhale deeply, and on the exhale, speak inwardly. I return to the whisper. I return to the knowing. I forgive myself for ignoring the soul. I will not postpone the divine again. And let that be the beginning of your new clarity, not by seeking new messages, but by honoring the one that never left. There is a sacred moment that visits every soul, sometimes in silence, sometimes in chaos, when the divine feeling descends like a feather from eternity, soft, barely perceptible, but unmistakably not of this world. It arrives without warning. It does not announce itself with trumpets or urgency. It doesn't arrive through analysis or outer proof. And because it comes so gently, so quietly, most ignore it. They feel a sacred pause inside, but they continue moving. They feel an opening in the chest, but they scroll on. They sense something glowing behind the breath, but they return to noise. And in that tiny moment of dismissal, they walk past the gate that leads to divine instruction. You must learn, my beloved, that when the divine feeling arrives, stop everything, not later, not when convenient, not after the meeting, not after the phone call or the errand or the deadline. Right then, in that instant, pause, breathe, gaze inward, because that moment is a doorway that does not stay open forever. That moment is a window between heaven and your timeline, a visitation from the infinite cloaked in stillness. If you let it pass without reverence, you do not lose God's love, but you do lose the message He was trying to deliver. The world will tell you, "You're too busy." The ego will say, "You can deal with that later," but your soul knows. Your soul hears the knock and says, "Now." Not tomorrow, now. It knows the vibration that has come. And if you honor that moment, if you pause, turn inward, and make yourself available, you will receive not just a feeling, but a transmission. Divine presence cannot be summoned on your terms. It arrives on God's breath. And your job is not to control it, but to respond to it. Let me give you a practice. The next time that sacred feeling rises, whether it's a sudden warmth in the heart, a pang of clarity, a tear that comes for no reason, or a gentle ache of truth that you didn't expect. Stop. Place your hand over your heart, gently, as if blessing it. Then lift your gaze not forcefully, but reverently toward the spiritual eye, the point between the eyebrows, the inner temple of knowing. Let your breath slow. Do not try to understand. Do not seek a message. Just be present. Feel. Breathe. Receive. If words arise, let them be few. Let them be sacred. You may say inwardly, I hear you. I feel you. I am here. No need to do more. No need to analyze or grasp or plan. Just sit in that inner chamber and let the vibration speak. Sometimes it will bring guidance. Sometimes just peace. Sometimes a quiet resolve. But always it will bring alignment. And that alignment is the soil in which miracles grow. The divine feeling is not a concept to be studied. It is a living moment to be honored. Imagine a feather floating before your eyes. If you move too fast, it's gone. If you try to grab it, it slips away. But if you become still, if you open your hands and wait, it lands on your palm, and you realize, this was not just a feeling, this was a visitation. And so now I say to you, not with urgency but with sacred insistence, the next time the divine feeling comes, stop everything. Do not rush. Do not second guess. Do not drown it with noise. Stop. Breathe. Receive. The world will wait, but the soul will not. And the moment you choose to honor it, the moment you say, this comes first, all things begin to shift. Because you have stepped out of habit and into holiness. When the sacred feeling rises quietly, reverently, like incense from the altar of your own heart, there is often no language that seems sufficient to respond. The mind searches for meaning. The ego grows restless in the silence. But the soul does not ask for an explanation. The soul only asks for relationship, not to understand, but to commune. And in that moment, there is one offering more powerful than any question you could form, more clarifying than any answer you could receive. It is the offering of prayer, but not the kind of prayer born from begging or need. This is a prayer of presence, a holy acknowledgement that the infinite is near and that you are finally listening. The soul's response to divine feeling must be simple, pure, empty of performance, filled with availability, not to ask for anything, but to enter the vibration of receptivity. In that stillness, when the sacred ache or warmth or clarity touches your heart, say these words inwardly, slowly, sincerely, and from the deepest part of you. Speak, Lord, for thy child listens. I will not run. I will not rush. I receive thee in this feeling. Let each line be a doorway. Speak, Lord, for thy child listens. This is not a demand. It is an invitation. You are not commanding God to talk. You are placing yourself in the ancient posture of listening that the saints and prophets knew so well. These words, drawn from the spirit of young Samuel in the temple, are the soul's way of saying, I recognize this moment as holy. I turn my full attention to you. There is humility here. There is stillness. There is the sacred dignity of a child who no longer needs to explain or resist, but simply to listen. I will not run. I will not rush. These are the vows that prevent you from returning to habit. For even when divine presence descends, the ego often wants to escape. It fears what it cannot control. It wants to resume its pace. So this line becomes a sacred chain that anchors you to the moment. You are saying to God, I am here. I will not move away from this grace. You declare it not once, but until your breath slows, until the body softens, until you mean it. I receive thee in this feeling. This is the completion, the surrender, the bow. Not I want to feel better or please fix this. Not even tell me what to do. No, this is deeper. This is the prayer of the mature soul who understands that the feeling itself is the transmission, that the presence you sense is not the means to an answer, it is the answer. You say, I receive thee, because you know now that the divine does not always come with words or visions or commands. Sometimes, God comes only as presence wrapped in feeling, and that is enough. When you speak this prayer, speak it 3 times, not to repeat out of superstition, but to allow it to pass through all layers of your being. The first time, the mind hears. The second time, the heart opens. The third time, the soul responds. Speak it in a whisper. Speak it in silence. Speak it with breath, with gaze lifted, with hand over heart. Let the prayer become a landing place for the divine within you. And afterward, say nothing more. Do not force stillness. Let the vibration hold you. Sit in the hush. You may cry, you may feel nothing. You may feel a vastness you cannot name. All of it is holy, for in that moment, something ancient has been fulfilled. The soul has answered the knock of God with a simple, quiet yes. So take this prayer now. Keep it with you. Carry it like a key in the pocket of your heart. And the next time the sacred feeling returns, whether in stillness or sorrow, in joy or emptiness, speak these words. Speak, Lord, for thy child listens. I will not run. I will not rush. I receive thee in this feeling. And then, receive. In every soul that walks the path of divine remembrance, there comes a momentous sacred turning when the inner whisper becomes louder than the world, and one must follow it, even if it leads into the unknown. This is not theoretical. This is not poetic idealism. This is the living truth I have walked in, breathed in, and surrendered to again and again. The most important decisions of my life were not made in council with scholars or upon reading volumes of scripture. They were made in utter stillness, in the quiet pulse of the heart where God spoke not with thunder, but with certainty clothed in feeling. When I was still in India, surrounded by my beloved homeland, by temples that sang with ancient echoes, by the sacred Ganges whose waters had bathed centuries of saints, there came a feeling. It was not born in thought. It was not the result of a plan. It came as a divine ache, a pull in the chest, a magnetic longing that whispered not in language but in vibration. Go to the West. My mind could not understand. Why would the Lord ask me to leave the land of saints and sages? Why would I depart from a culture that breathed my same devotion? But the feeling grew. It persisted. It did not argue, it remained. I knew then, this was not personal desire. This was divine instruction. And so I obeyed, not without trembling, not without unknowns, but with surrender. And because I followed the vibration, not the plan, not the safety, but the inner current, the work of self-realization fellowship was born. A movement to carry the ancient science of Kriya Yoga across oceans. And all of it began with a feeling, one divine whisper in the heart. Again, years later, when I was working in New York, surrounded by energy and opportunity, another feeling came, softer than the first, but just as clear. Go to the West Coast. No explanation. Just a sense that something holy awaited me in the silence of California's hills. I had no disciples there, no buildings, no plans, but the feeling glowed. And because I had learned to trust it, I followed. I traveled to Los Angeles, where a mountain, later called Mount Washington, became the spiritual headquarters of my work. Again, the mind could not have foreseen this, but the soul knew, because the soul is always watching from above. I have seen this same divine guidance awaken in the hearts of my disciples. One man was torn between two life paths, both good, both reasonable, but he could not decide. He meditated, fasted, and still felt uncertain. Finally, in the early hours of dawn, as he sat in stillness, he felt a warmth enter his chest, a deep peace descend. He didn't hear a voice. He didn't see a vision. He simply knew. He chose the path that came with the feeling, not excitement, not ambition, but peace. And years later, he told me, Master, everything opened after that, because he had chosen not with his ego, but with the divine whisper of his soul. You see, even great souls are not immune to confusion, but the ones who walk in power, in light, in divine clarity, they are the ones who listen to the inner feeling and obey. The spiritual path is not made of thunder. It is not paved by crowds. It is walked in solitude, guided by a flame that flickers in the chest, never extinguished, always whispering, this way. And so I offer you my life as testimony, not to elevate myself, but to show you that the divine feeling you sense is not fantasy. It is the same thread that guided the prophets, the saints, the avatars. It is the eternal vibration of God echoing in the temple of your heart. And the moment you stop running from it, the moment you pause, breathe, and say, yes, Lord, I feel thee, your life will begin to move with the same miraculous orchestration. So reflect now. What divine feeling have you been postponing? What inner whisper have you ignored because it didn't come with a map? What moment of sacred stillness did you brush past because the world seemed louder? Return to it now. Place your hand upon your chest and say, "The same God who spoke to Yogananda speaks in me now. The same voice that moves saints moves me now. The same vibration that changed his life is whispering mine into alignment." This is not metaphor. This is not history. This is your invitation. One of the most important skills on the path of divine realization is not simply the ability to feel, but the ability to discern to know, with clarity and certainty, whether the inner sensation that stirs you is born from the ego's disguise or from the whisper of the soul. For the ego is clever, oh so clever. It knows how to mimic spiritual urgency. It knows how to cloak fear in the language of inspiration. It even knows how to wear the mask of peace momentarily so that you confuse its voice for God's. And this is why many seekers find themselves trapped in cycles of spiritual misdirection, mistaking intensity for insight, restlessness for revelation, and anxiety for intuition. But the divine feeling and the egoic impulse could not be more different, not in form, but in frequency. Let us begin with the ego. The ego's feeling is always fast. It is insistent, it is hungry. It rushes in like wind through an open window, loud, immediate, and often dressed in logic. It says, act now, say yes now, change everything now. It uses words like urgent or else, you must, you should, and its presence comes with a slight tightness in the chest, a contraction in the stomach, a narrowing of the breath. Though it may promise peace, its vibration is pressure. And if you sit with it for more than a few moments, you begin to feel it unravel. It becomes noise, static, discomfort. That is the mark of the egoic impulse. It does not sustain peace, it disguises it. The divine feeling, by contrast, is not push, it is pull. It does not demand, it invites. It does not grip, it gathers you into stillness. When a divine feeling arises, it may not even come with clarity at first. It may arrive simply as a spacious awareness, a sudden softness in your inner field, a pause that carries peace instead of fear. It does not beg to be followed. It does not shout. It simply remains still, luminous, and full of grace. And when you honor it, when you give it your attention, it expands. It doesn't constrict you. It opens you. The ego says, if you don't do this, something bad will happen. The soul says, if you sit with this, something true will emerge. The ego rushes. The soul waits. The ego grabs. The soul guides. Think of it like this. The ego is wind, it moves fast, loud, chaotic, and then it's gone. The soul is gravity, invisible, constant, undeniable. You don't see it. You don't hear it. But it is always pulling you into alignment with your center. The question is not whether the soul is speaking. The question is whether you are still enough to feel what never left. One of the most reliable tools you can use is this. After a feeling arises, wait, breathe, return to stillness. If the feeling persists without pressure, if it grows stronger in stillness rather than weaker, if it brings peace instead of anxiety, if it feels more like love than like fear, it is divine. But if the feeling fades in silence, if it demands urgency, if it thrives only in distraction, it is ego. Let the stillness be your filter. Let peace be your compass. And if ever you are unsure, remember, the soul will never lead you into something that separates you from God. The divine feeling always brings you closer to your center, closer to humility, closer to peace, closer to a deeper trust in the divine. It may guide you into challenge, yes, but never into inner chaos. Even when the soul asks you to walk through difficulty, it does so with a light around your feet. It does not leave you afraid, it leaves you anchored. So now, I ask you to take this discernment deep into your breath. Close your eyes, breathe softly, say within, I do not follow pressure, I follow peace. I do not obey fear, I obey stillness. I do not serve the rush, I serve the whisper. And let that whisper be your guide, not because it is louder than the noise, but because it is truer than all of it. The voice of the divine is always speaking, but to hear it, you must train the receiver. And that receiver, beloved, is not your intellect, nor your willpower, nor your constant seeking. It is the inner temple of your own stillness, the subtle field of your spiritual heart, the quiet gaze of the soul that waits patiently beneath all distraction. Most people believe that divine feeling arrives randomly, like grace dropping from the sky. But I tell you, divine feeling is as constant as the sunlight. It is not the feeling that is inconsistent. It is the antenna of your awareness that must be adjusted daily, lovingly, with reverence and devotion. And once you begin to nourish your inner receiver, not just once a week or when you feel lost, but as a holy habit, then the whisper becomes familiar. The silence becomes filled. And you begin to walk not in search of guidance, but in continuous communion with it. Let me give you 4 simple yet sacred practices, daily invitations that, when honored, will refine your inner sensitivity, expand your soul's field, and make divine communication your way of being, not just an occasional moment of grace. First practice: 3 minutes of stillness before every major decision. You do not need long hours of ritual to hear the soul. You need sacred interruption. Before making any decision that affects your energy, your peace, your direction, pause. Stop everything. Turn away from the screen, the conversation, the impulse to act. Sit upright. Close your eyes. Breathe slowly in through the nose, out through the mouth. 3 minutes. That's all. But in those minutes, ask not for answers, ask for alignment. Say within, not my will, but thine. Not my fear, but thy whisper. Often, within the first minute, a soft knowing will begin to form. Not a command, not a demand. Just a directional feeling. Follow that not from reaction, but from resonance. Second practice: touch the heart center when you feel confused. Your hand, placed over the center of your chest, is not just a gesture of comfort, it is a spiritual circuit. It grounds you into the moment. It draws your awareness away from the spinning wheels of thought and into the sanctuary of divine presence. When confusion strikes, when options multiply, when your mind feels torn, do not argue with yourself. Do not spiral. Simply place your palm over your heart, breathe, and listen. Sometimes the feeling will rise instantly. Sometimes it will come hours later. But the act of placing your hand there is a signal to the universe: I am ready to listen. I am available to the truth. Third practice: gaze upward and breathe before you respond. Before answering a difficult message, before speaking in conflict, before reacting to stress, look up, not with your eyes alone, but with your consciousness. Shift your inner gaze to the spiritual eye, the Christ center, the point between the eyebrows. Take 1 full breath. Let the inhale rise from the base of your spine. Let the exhale release all urgency. In that one moment, the energy of your being rises above instinct, and what comes through you next will be closer to God. This simple pause, a breath, and a gaze can save you from unnecessary karma, from emotional fallout, from walking away from the soul's path. Fourth practice: morning invocation. What does my soul know today? Before you look at your phone, before you check messages or enter the world, place your hand on your heart, lift your gaze, and ask this question: what does my soul know today? Do not expect an answer in words. Expect a feeling, a texture, a subtle leaning toward truth. Maybe the answer will come in stillness. Maybe it will come later in the day as synchronicity. But by asking sincerely, daily, you declare your loyalty not to the world, but to the inner voice of God. And that loyalty is what activates the miracle of guidance. These practices are not duties. They are devotions. Do not perform them with mechanical intent. Perform them with reverence, as a lover leans in to hear the beloved breathe. For the divine is already speaking. The question is not whether he will send the signal. The question is whether your receiver is open, clean, and tuned. And now, breathe. Feel the sacredness of this very moment. Gaze softly inward and say, I am not deaf to the whisper. I am not blind to the light. I remember now, God has always been speaking. I will listen every day, not just in need, but in love. From this day forward, let your life become a sacred receiver. And let that receiver be tuned by devotion, not desperation. By practicing, not panic. By listening, not striving. There is a divine truth that must now be sealed not with thought alone, but with vibration, repetition, embodiment. For you have listened deeply, You have remembered what the feeling means. You have honored the whisper in your heart. But without the installation of a new identity, without the somatic anchoring of this awareness into your body and breath, the ego will return. The old mental patterns will reclaim the silence, and the miracle of your recognition will remain a glimpse instead of becoming your foundation. That is why we now enter the affirmation loop not as mantra for the mind, but as reprogramming for the soul-body temple. Words, when infused with sincerity, become more than speech. They become sacred technology living currents that rewrite your energetic field, reform your responses, and realign your subconscious toward divine remembrance. And so we do not repeat to convince ourselves, we repeat to become what we have remembered. Let your posture now be reverent. Sit upright, shoulders soft but alert, spine like a column of light. Place one hand over your heart, not casually, but consciously. Let the other rest gently on your thigh or knee. Close your eyes. Bring your inner gaze upward, not toward tension, but toward devotional attention. Breathe slowly. Feel the space widen behind your chest. Feel the inner stillness prepare the altar for truth. Now, with your breath as a carrier of vibration, begin the loop. I listen to the voice in my heart. Say it slowly. Let each syllable ring within your being. Feel the vibrations settle into your chest, your ribs, your spine. You are declaring that listening is your default, not fear, not reaction. Listening pure, sacred, surrendered listening is now your posture in life. Again, I trust the peace it brings. This is the second layer. You do not just hear the voice, you trust it. You do not demand guarantees. You do not delay for evidence. You trust. And that trust is the most beautiful form of surrender, the highest proof of spiritual maturity. Breathe it in. Let the breath say it with you. I trust the peace it brings. Peace is the signal of God. You will not confuse pressure for presence again. And now the third thread. I follow where love leads. Let this be the vow that completes the spiral. You do not just feel. You do not just trust. You follow. You move. You surrender. You obey not out of obligation, but out of love. Because the voice that speaks through divine feeling is the voice of God, and it always leads you to more light. Repeat it slowly. I follow where love leads. Let your voice soften. Let the breath stretch longer. This is the alignment of spirit and will. This is the becoming. Repeat the full loop 3 times. I listen to the voice in my heart. I trust the peace it brings. I follow where love leads. I listen to the voice in my heart. I trust the peace it brings. I follow where love leads. I listen to the voice in my heart. I trust the peace it brings. I follow where love leads. Now sit in the echo. No more speaking, just presence. Let the repetition swirl in your field. Let it settle in the spine. Let it wrap your aura like a shawl of clarity. You are not merely saying affirmations. You are rewriting identity. You are declaring that you are one who listens, who trusts, who follows. Not when convenient, not when desperate, but every day, in all ways, in all decisions, in all emotions. From this vibration, life no longer needs to be figured out. It begins to unfold. The right people arrive. The timing aligns. The inner GPS grows louder. Because you are no longer a seeker wandering, you are a listener walking. And such souls are rare. Such souls are radiant. Such souls are ready for miracles. So carry this loop with you. Speak it aloud each morning. Whisper it when the heart trembles. Anchor it with breath, with touch, with upward gaze. And know, the one who listens becomes the one who leads not others, but themselves, back home to God. And now, beloved soul, we arrive at the closing of this sacred remembrance note as one ends a story, but as one seals a scroll. For nothing in you was newly given here. What you have heard in these words, what you have felt between the silences, was never foreign. It was ancient memory reawakened. It was the voice you've always carried, beneath the noise of striving, beneath the weight of doubt, beneath the surface of every tear and every ache you could never explain. And now that the whisper has been unveiled, now that you have tasted again the feeling that breathes just beneath thought, I ask you one final thing. Never again walk past that whisper. Never again dismiss the subtle nudge of the soul, thinking it too quiet to matter. Never again trade the infinite for the temporary, the sacred for the logical. the peace of the heart for the noise of the world. For that whisper is not merely a spiritual phenomenon. It is not just intuition, not just a hunch, not just inner guidance. That whisper is God calling you to yourself. That whisper is the formless presence reaching into form. It is the divine breath speaking your name, not in sound, but in frequency. And every time you ignore it, you lengthen the journey. Every time you doubt it, you add another layer to the veil. Every time you postpone its invitation, the soul weeps not in punishment, but in sorrow that you walked past the beloved when he stood at the door of your chest. From this day forward, you are no longer allowed to pretend you don't hear it. You are no longer allowed to explain it away. You are no longer permitted to rationalize your avoidance. You are a soul now awakened to the truth. That divine feeling is not emotion, it is instruction. And instruction ignored is not harmless. It is delay. It is suffering. It is exile from the current that was trying to carry you forward. So, I leave you with this final decree, not to be spoken in haste, but to be breathed with reverence whenever the feeling returns, whenever the chest warms, whenever the sacred ache glows in silence. The next time the feeling arises, I will stop. I will breathe. I will listen. I will remember this is not emotion. This is God. Say it slowly. Say it sincerely. Say it now. And again when the world grows loud, and again when you forget who you are. Let this become your soul's law. The whisper is your map. The peace is your proof. The stillness is your sanctuary. The feeling is your communion. And if you ever wonder again, is this truly the voice of God? Remember this metaphor as the final image written upon the sacred walls of your memory. The whisper is not knocking to be heard. It is knocking to awaken you. It is not outside your door. It is the door. And when you answer it not with thought, but with presence, the entire house of your life becomes a temple. A temple filled with the fragrance of divine love, with the music of inner knowing, with the echo of eternity rising softly from the soul. I invite you now, if your heart is ready, to declare it publicly. Speak it into the world's field, not for approval, but as an energetic vow. I listen. I follow. I remember. Let this be the mantra of your walk. Let it lead your mornings. Let it close your nights. Let it seal your decisions and clarify your path. Let it quiet your fear and reignite your joy. Let it remind you that you are no longer a stranger to the voice within. And now, in the language of silence, I offer this blessing to you. May you never again walk past the place where your soul was speaking. May you never again silence the God within your breath. May you rise each day with the whisper already heard and the peace already chosen. May your life be lived in the rhythm of divine remembrance. You are not forgotten. You are not behind. You are simply ready now to listen, to follow, to remember.